to look back on this. So this is really meant to be a conversation that Julia and I will be co-facilitating as your resident adult MKs. We've also both been involved in MK care or like MK leadership towards younger MKs. So we have both those experiences of being on the field ourselves and also caring for today's MKs. To foster conversation, if you're comfortable, I'd like to invite you to unmute yourself. And that way we can just have a flowing conversation. Julia, would you like to add anything?
I think that was a wonderful introduction. Thank you so much for giving it. I think to start out, I think some of the things we're just wanting to address are just kind of some of the distinct needs and challenges of being an MK, who takes care of them, especially in the realm of international ministries, because I said earlier, I went to Liberty University, and there's a large MK population there, but most of them are from different sending organizations that don't have a lot of care for missionary kids. So IM is actually really unique in that they have someone who is specifically supposed to take care of the MKs and check in on them and make sure that they're doing okay. And I personally think that she's wonderful because she's also my mother. So I'm a little bit biased, but she's great and she does a wonderful job. And then we also wanted to talk, if you're interested, a little bit about what churches in American Baptist areas can do to be supportive of your MKs. And we're really just looking forward to talking to you about that and learning a bit about you as well, and what all you have done to help with MKs and to be involved with IM and other mission organizations and all of that. So yeah.
Yeah.
You said, Nora, you have lived in the Czech Republic, correct? And have you lived anywhere else as a kid, like MK, or did you move primarily after like graduating and becoming an adult? How all did that work out?
Yeah, well, at International Ministries, it used to be the cycle of being on the field and being on home assignment used to be quite rigid. So every 4 years, we would go one complete year to back to the US for home assignment. So that means visiting churches, thanking people, raising funds, things like that. So I was primarily based in Czech Republic, but every 4 years we would go 1 year to the US. So when I was 4, when I was 10, when I was 16. And it might have been a different experience for different MKs because I know throughout the years I am started to be a bit more flexible with that schedule. So people could, for example, be there the whole school year and then in the summer return to the US. But Julia, I'm wondering how your experience was with that.
Yeah, so I remember the first 4 years that we went, we had that same rule where you were 4 years and then a year back. But I think that we kind of switched it up a little bit after that. So I was in Thailand. The only place I've ever lived overseas, and really the only place I've ever traveled overseas is Thailand. I lived in Chiang Mai. And we had it set up so the first 4 years we were in Thailand and then we went back for a year. But after that, I think we kind of mixed it up a little bit and had a couple years on and then like a few months off. And now that's what my parents are doing as well. So we get to see them a lot more often, which is good because all of us are back in the US now. All 4 of us kids are back in the US. So it's been cool to be able to see them more frequently. Yeah.
So thank you, Mercy and Debbie, for joining us. Debbie was our head MK care person, the hero we've mentioned. Yeah. Do you have any questions for us before we continue, or anything you're curious about?
I have a question since I don't know much about this topic. When you talk about care for missionary kids, what form does that take? What do they do? What do you do?
Mm. Mom, do you actually want to answer that question?
Actually, I don't want to take away from you and Nora Elizabeth, so I'm going to let you guys handle it unless you need me.
All right. Well, from my experience, what I have seen my mother do is travel around all over the world, visiting MKs, meeting with them one-on-one, making sure that they're doing okay mentally, spiritually, emotionally, just checking in on them and making sure that they have that support. She offers counseling and general support for missionary kids and their families as well. She is really, in my experience, she was a great mother. And so she gives some good advice as well, and is just there to support parents because I'd love to hear what you think about this, Nora, but from my experience, because my parents went later in life on the mission field, it was a big deal learning to raise kids in a whole different culture and learning to adjust because they were going through the process of adjusting to a new culture themselves. And then they also had to raise kids in that context. And so it was a lot. I think they did a really good job, but it's difficult to do. And so she offers support in that area as well. Nora, you were there from a very young age. So what was your experience like with that and your parents and how they raised you and that kind of thing?
Yeah, interesting question when we talk about cultures, because my parents are actually from two different cultures that are not the US. So my mom is Mexican and my dad is Dutch, and we work with an American mission organization in Europe. So that was a ton of different cultures growing up, and to be honest, I think they did a great job. Navigating that, and it really added to my growth as a person to have like to live in a country that wasn't either of my parents' home country. I think also really helped in, okay, I'm going a little bit off topic, but like in learning about each of the cultures, because there wasn't a predominant thing, a predominant one. And that brings me to something that I wanted to address in this meeting as well, is the experience of third culture kids. Sometimes missionary kids are called third culture kids, and that is basically where your um, current home country may not be your country of origin. And then you create sort of this third culture. So MKs fall within that category, but I do think we have a very unique experience in that we go back to our home country, and there's not as much of a loss in that um, connection or tie, because we go back, and when we go back, our experiences are very linked to visiting churches, visiting family, like road tripping all over the US. Um, so I think that's a very unique experience to a missionary kid that not all third culture kids experience. And it's something that, yeah, can have a big impact on kids during their formative years, a lasting impact. So that's why MK Care is so important, just to know that you have a person that supports you. And actually, so Julia had mentioned that IM is quite unique in that we have someone for MK Care. And also, maybe you know, but maybe you don't know this behind the scenes, is that about 10 years ago on our 200th anniversary, the MKs came together and petitioned the IM leadership for an MK Care person. So that was a need that we saw, and that they followed up on and listened to us. And now we have a wonderful person with a big heart for MKs and very well equipped to support us, to support our families. And something that really encourages me is that Debbie, it's not, so she focuses on a more holistic approach when addressing MK needs. So it's anywhere between families with babies, primary, elementary school, middle school, high school, but also young adults, which I think is really important. We often forget sometimes that MKs exist after they turn 18 and go to college. Um, I know I felt that a little bit. If you're an only child like me, or you're the youngest child in the family, once you turn 18, you're no longer on the prayer cards, you're no longer on any IM like promotions. So that can be a tough transition when you're also going to university. And in many cases, you're going back to your home country to study. And that's another transition. Transitioning into that culture is another
Yeah.
huge step.
And learning a whole new culture, because college culture is its own thing as well. Like it's different no matter what college you go to and what state you're in and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was a lot of information.
All good though.
Um,
Thank you for sharing that.
does that answer your question, Jim? For
Yeah,
if
that
anyone
was good.
has any follow-up questions?
I'm just gonna ask in that question about how we do MK care, can you talk a little bit about conferences?
Yeah, we actually have one coming up very soon that Nora and I are both going to be at, as well as many other people in this room. Conferences are one of my favorite things. They were when I was a kid, and now that I'm an adult MK, I'm really excited to be part of like leading it or part of it. And that's something that's really cool about this upcoming conference that we're going to, all staff gathering. The adult MKs have actually been included. Like you were saying, Nora, like sometimes it feels like we're forgotten. We're not part of the IM family anymore, even though we have been for some of us from birth all the way till now. So it can be hard to feel like we're not part of it anymore. But one thing that's really cool about this upcoming all staff gathering is that they have invited all of the young adult MKs to come as well. So there will be MKs from a very, very, very baby young age all the way up to adult MKs. And we're going to be doing kind of like a debrief, which I think is really important. It's something that we did at a conference we had in last year, where we just sit down and breathe for a minute and get to be surrounded by other people who understand what it is to have multiple cultures all inside one person, and just kind of be surrounded by people who understand the struggles and the difficulties of being an MK, as well as the joys of being an MK and what it's like to experience a lot of really beautiful things as well. And so, yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I really enjoyed the last one. Nora, do you have anything else you want to talk about, especially because you're more involved in leadership in this upcoming meeting than I am?
Yeah, thanks, Julia. I think you did a really good job. Just to add a couple of things. So last year we had the IM's conference for missionaries, where missionaries beginning their home assignment year get together and have a conference. And last year we had a big focus on MKs as well. So we had, how many did we have? Like over 20?
Yeah,
22 MKs, which is huge. I remember the last, we call it Seafoam. The last Seafoam I attended, there were 4 MKs, including myself. So it was quite a big change. Some MKs even flew in specifically to attend the conference, even if their parents were not. Some of the older MKs came, and we had a lot of discussion about topics that were really tailored to the MK life, and yeah, sharing tools that you can cope with or navigate a bit more what life is like as an MK with people who are MKs. And I know it was very intentional from Debbie to also open up the leadership for that conference to adult MKs, so that the leaders could also like bring their experiences that MKs could feel more comfortable sharing. And I just wanted to share some of the topics, things like having good goodbyes, because we say goodbye a lot. So how do we do that? How to make friends with um, kids who are monocultural kids, so who don't have that experience of being a missionary kid, which sounds kind of funny, but we were like having practice conversations because it can be daunting to interact with someone who's had such a different life experience and whose outlook to life is so different. For example, because we say goodbye a lot as MKs, we also tend to try and dive really deep into relationships quickly. And for people who have just grown up in one place, that can sometimes seem scary or overbearing when you're all of a sudden asked these very personal questions in an attempt to build a deeper friendship. But of course, we don't have the luxury of time, it feels like sometimes. Whereas someone who's been in one place for a longer might feel like, oh, well, next week we'll say hello, and the week after we'll be like, how are you? And kind of build up like that. Another important thing is like learning to recognize and name emotions. When something quite difficult has happened, or when something really nice happens, and also trying not to feel guilty when it is difficult. Because a lot of times, if we go back to the US in churches and we try to share something difficult, the response is often, oh, but it's so cool that you're living abroad, like internationally. And then there's this kind of guilt that comes like, oh, I should be really happy that I'm having these experiences, but it's difficult. So kind of learning to navigate that and learning that it's okay to feel a mix of emotions.
Mm. On a similar note, what would you say is something that you've learned being an MK that you don't think you would have learned if you were not an MK? Because those are all a lot of things like Mom was teaching us at the conference, that a lot of people don't have that experience of needing to learn those things. Maybe they're more well emotionally adjusted than most MKs. But yeah, so what are some other like experiences or things that you've learned about God and how he moves or whatever that you don't think you would have if you were not an MK?
Oh, good question. From my personal experience, I think um, growing up as an MK helped me become sensitive to other cultures and helped me become sensitive to um, those who, or like recognizing those who don't feel included in a social setting. I'm seeing kind of who's on the outside and kind of trying to bring them in as someone who may have felt that they have been on the outside in new cultural settings. Also, I think, and Julia, maybe you can add to this, as an MK, it's been really easy to adapt to different settings or cultures, different places. It's quite easy to switch between them, to feel like you're involved. It's difficult because you're kind of like a chameleon, but at the same time, you never really fit in anywhere. So it's again this idea of like holding both things together, of like feeling like you can fit in anywhere, but also feeling like you don't fit in anywhere.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so in terms of what I've learned about God, I think this comes with my specific MK experience. So my parents, they coordinate volunteers throughout Europe. So they go to the churches, see what their needs are, and then if they would like to receive volunteers from the US. And so growing up, I was traveling a lot throughout Europe, and I was able to see how God is working in tangible ways in each church's unique context and the unique communities that God has placed them in. And so it was really striking to see that the churches are very linked or in a unique position to minister to their communities, and how God works through that, through the people that are there. And I keep using the word unique, but really through the unique people in the unique situations. So yeah, it was a real blessing to see how God can move in any type of context.
Yeah, I second that for sure. My parents didn't do the same kind of thing, but I definitely have been able to see, even coming back to the US, I think I've been able to see that in different churches, because again, MKs travel a lot to different churches. We see a lot of churches, and seeing how they're all working uniquely in the space that they've been given, in the place that God has put them. It's really cool. It's such a blessing, for sure.
Carolyn, I've seen you unmute yourself for a little while. Do you have a question?
No, I was just thinking, years ago, we had the newsletter called God's Kids that different MKs would write, one group or family would write one, and 1 month, another month. It gave us such a good look at MKs and their lives, and we were reminded often of them. And I was thinking of that nowadays, it seems like MKs are invisible. We forget about them because nothing's coming through to remind us they're there and who they are and what their needs are and so forth. So I was just going to put a plug in for the God Kids, but it was great to hear from them when they're on the field, and it was really interesting. But
Wow.
it'd be good to remember, and I think I even fail in this, but sending birthday cards and things like this is good to help with the MKs. And I was wondering, when you come back to college, your parents aren't in the US as a support system like kids here. They go off to college and they still have parents around. But do you feel lost with the shock of the culture change and the no support system with you? Or how does it feel coming back to college? Or of course Nora, you went to college in Holland or the Netherlands, so you didn't come here, but probably was the same thing. There's the support system is lacking. How does it happen how do you feel when you come back? The culture is so different.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think something that was definitely hard for me to adjust to. When I came back, I didn't have anyone to move me into school. And I was going to school 10 hours away from where home base here is in the US. So I was driving from Indiana to Virginia, and I would have had to go alone if my older sister was not in the US, and if we didn't have a close family friend who gave up her time to drive me out there. So there are support systems, but I would say they're harder to find. You have to look for them a lot deeper, and it feels, especially when you've been gone for a long time, like it's kind of a distant support system, that like maybe they're a support system for your parents or for your older sibling or for whatever, but they're not your support system as much as they are caring for you because they love your family, which is beautiful and wonderful. And I'm not downgrading that at all. But it is difficult to come back and then see, I don't know this culture. I don't know all of these famous people that everyone is talking about. I don't know the political things that have been going on because I was keeping up with politics in the country that I was in. I don't know, especially I was homeschooled. So I also had that going for me. Not that I think homeschoolers are not as in tune, but when you're homeschooled and you live in another country than everyone else, those two things do not always work together for the best of cultural knowledge and knowing what's going on. So it was really difficult for me, and I think that my older siblings experienced something similar when they came back, of having the difficulty of adjusting without a home base, without a support system. When my older sister came back, we didn't have a house. We didn't have somewhere for her to go on summer vacation. And my parents learned from that and said, all right, we need somewhere. We need somewhere for them to go, because bouncing between family members and family friends, it's not sustainable, and it's not home.
Right,
And MKs really need a sense of home.
right,
It's something that we're always grasping for and searching for. And ultimately, when we find out that God is home, there's such a peace that can come. But that doesn't mean, I mean, we human beings were made for community. We were made to be with people. So I would say it's difficult. It's not an easy transition. I had a wonderful mom and a wonderful dad and wonderful siblings who understood what I was going through and who made sure that they were keeping in contact with me and checking in on me and all of that. And I also was going to a school that had a large missionary kid population. So I had a lot of people who understood what I was going through. So that helped a little bit as well. A lot of MKs don't have that. But it was difficult. It was difficult, but it was good. And I learned a lot from it. And God definitely worked in it for sure.
I'm just gonna chime in and say that as the parent of an MK going to college, it's very hard as well. Because we're literally half a world away from
Right.
Julia. And so, you know, if something happened during the day and she needed us, well, it's the middle of the night where we are.
right.
So we're just, even though there's the internet and there's all these great ways of keeping in touch, it's still not immediate accessibility. And that's,
Right.
yeah, that just adds a layer of how difficult it can be.
It's, nobody that you can think of as a support for calling at the middle of the night for them to call. Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
I worry too.
Yeah,
Denora, how did you feel?
it's interesting talking about support systems, because also when you're living abroad, you don't really have that support system of extended family. So when you move to a country where you do have extended family, they're not automatically your support system, just because you're not used to having people to call on. Like, of course, there are family friends and maybe even colleagues and things like that, that you had in your home culture, or not home culture, your MK culture. That can feel like a home culture sometimes, but yeah. And so I remember moving to the Netherlands for uni, where my dad is from. I was so nervous because I would be closer to my extended family. and
Right.
and I didn't know what like the expectation was of like, do I have to go to each birthday? Like, how often should I call, or like, should I be inviting people to visit me? I don't know. Because
Right.
I didn't grow up with having like grandparents and uncles and cousins in the same country. Um, Beyond that, I do think that I've witnessed God's grace through people so much more when I was trying to be on my own for a little bit, both in the Netherlands and in the US. And it was also something I know my parents had prayed for as I was leaving, but like people kind of adopt you sometimes, which is so nice. Like if you find a home church, or from people who know your family and have supported your family for years, and are
Right.
concerned for you now that they're closer to you. It's really wonderful. I had a situation quite recently actually where I was in the US and kind of like didn't really have a place where I was looking for a place to call home, and just the concern and the love and the generosity that people extended to me was astounding. I felt, because it's easy to feel kind of isolated from people when you're on the field, and when you only see them once every 4 years. But just
Right.
having that tangible support was really, really impactful and special. So um, yeah, I just want to thank everyone who supports MKs, who even if it's just like one conversation that you had one time at a church, of like um just seeing us and supporting us, whether it's been birthday cards, which also make a huge impact when you're overseas. And you're like, oh my
Yes.
goodness, someone remembered me an ocean away. And they remembered my birthday. So that was always special. I know I kept a few of my cards. It's kind of funny too though when people just say from your friends at FBC, like First Baptist Church. And you're like, thank you,
Uh-huh.
but I don't know where.
Right.
That's just true.
True.
Yeah, so it's really special. And Julia, I don't know if you want to add anything to that. And if not, I'd also like to open up the floor to hear from you all, if you how you've experienced MKs, if you've met MKs before, what your perspective has been like. Yeah.
Mhm.
And if you haven't, that's okay too. You can share like, oh, this is my first time meeting MKs. um,
This is my first time hearing more than one sentence from an MK.
we can be very quiet sometimes.
We are very glad to have you here too.
Yes.
I just want to share some of my experiences. Being as a pastor's kid, but still we had these transfers, means we do missionary work. So my father would be moving from a place to another place. So just like a missionary thing, it's in Sri Lanka, but still we were in Colombo first in my child, at my age of 6 or so, and then we had to move to another place. It's a Sinhalese community. It's a separate another language they speak up. It's Tamil and Sinhala in Sri Lanka, so it's another community. They have their cultures and stuff, so we had to get used to that. Afterwards, we were shifted back to the hill country where they have these tea pluckers and all of them. So it was another kind of culture up there. So we grew up there studying there with them. The language, though we speak Tamil, it's still different. The slangs and everything are different. So we had to learn the new words and stuff. So and afterwards we had to move back to the eastern coast of Sri Lanka. It's in Batticaloa. So then we had to face struggling with the same if it's even it's in Tamil. The slangs were different, the words were few new words for us, the styles they were, and the culture up there was different. And actually I had a twin brother, so he had a really hard time with that, so I had to cope up with him, supporting him, praying with him, to get him back to normal for studies, because we were a little bit backwards because in Eastern they had the studies going up a bit forward. So I can it's kind of, though yeah, I'm not an MK, but still a pastor's kid. But the thing I went through this, I can feel that how I can just compare with Joel what it feels like. So but in each and every places God's care was there with us, though there are it's new culture, new people for us to meet up, still they accept them as one of us. So right now in so far in all around in Sri Lanka, I have friends wherever I go now. So that's kind of a good thing which I just got from. Still there are churches where I can visit with. So right now I'm back in Colombo, but just a bit out of Colombo. But still I have friends out there who are in Christ also. So that's a good experience. So I just want to share with you.
That's so cool. Yeah, third culture kid, for sure. That's so cool that you've been able to experience all those cultures, but also hard. Yeah, like a lot of new all the time. I definitely relate and understand. It's hard, but it's good, but it's hard. And it's hard to balance all of those things together. But thank you so much for sharing your story.
And the best part is the slang, the Tamil I speak right now, it's a kind of a mixed up, it's like a fruit salad.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Thank you for the time.
Yeah, I definitely feel that slang part um, of it. When I moved back to the US, I was so surprised that people were actually using words that I had seen on TikTok. It's like TikTok in real life. But yeah, so learning that as well can be difficult, or like you hear a phrase and you're not quite sure what it means, but people assume you do. Um, yeah, yeah, thanks for sharing. Anyone else that would like to share?
I just have our two children were raised overseas, so excuse me, I know you know my daughter Sarah and my son Andrew. He's home now from college, so they both when we came back, that my son was a freshman in high school and my daughter was a junior, and they were 3 and 5 when we moved to another Central Asia. So I just appreciate all that you are saying, and thank you for being open to share what you have been through and experienced. So I think we had when we came back, they had to, like you, be in different places, and uh, I think saying goodbye. I think that was a big difficult thing. Maybe sometimes uh, you don't think you should make relationships because you know that you're not going to be able to. Um, you're going to move again, so that could be a not a good thing. I mean, because you want to, but I mean, I think my children have kept in touch with a lot of their friends from where they were in international schools. So even coming back to this country, some of them who were Korean kind of went to school here, or some were American Korean, and they've had reunions, and it's powerful, when you can see someone that you knew and you stay in touch. So I think they have deeper, long-lasting relationships, and when they have their get-togethers, no one else really understands, right, what they knew, where they were, and but yeah, I'm just reflecting on things. But I think coming back in high school, maybe as a freshman, is easier. My daughter was a junior, my son was a freshman, so and some of the cliques that were here were children that I grew up for years in one spot, and it was hard not just for them to break into the culture of the parents' culture, but the parents too, because everyone's on their committees and things. But I think they realize, the specialness too of the things that they learned when they were overseas, to the language learning and in the different world perspective. And we had a lot of love too from people, but yeah, just reflecting. But thank you for letting me be a part of it. I'm always wanting to learn more how I can be a better understand and be helpful.
Thank you so much.
You guys are like heroes, so great job.
Thank you.
I wanted to just chime in for those of you who are from American Baptist churches that might support global servants who have MKs. I did have to laugh when I never heard an MK speak. We have resources that have been developed to help churches cultivate their relationships with missionary kids. One of those resources is actually titled How to Talk to Missionary Kids. It just gives good ways to start those conversations, because what I found in this ministry is it's not that they don't want to talk. You just have to know what to say to get them talking. And sometimes we in the American church inadvertently make a mistake. We don't realize we're making a mistake, but we ask the wrong thing or we say the wrong thing. And in our American culture, we're trying to start conversation, but to MKs in their MK culture, they don't hear it as conversation starting. It catches them off guard and they don't know what to say in response. So if that's something that you're interested in, either the how to talk to MKs, how to pray for MKs, how to build relationships between your church and MKs, all of these are resources that I have available, and you can contact me through the International Ministries website, just internationalministries.org, and look for my name, Debbie Whitmer, and it'll let you send me an email, and I'd be glad to get information to you so that the next time you're with missionary kids, you're better ready and know kind of what to say and how to interact with them and how to support them. And we have a resource about supporting college-age MKs, which is part of the conversation we had earlier. So yeah, if you want to know more, just send me an email and I'd be glad to send you anything that I can to help in your support of MKs.
Thank you, Dwayne, for sharing. That's a good point about like learning to say good goodbyes, but then also the other side of that coin of like that it's difficult to start relationships, and that might also tie into like us saying one sentence to people, just because, especially like going from church to church when you're in the US, you can, on any given Sunday, you can be attending anywhere between 1 and 4 church services. So many new people, like, and always, a lot of times the questions are the same. I remember in middle school, I would be joking with my MK friends, like, I should just make a card. Like, what's your name? What's your age? What's your favorite color? What's your favorite culture? What's your favorite subject in school? Like, those were always the same questions, which is fine, like, those are typically the questions you would get, but it can be a little bit tiring having to interact with those same questions over and over and over again. And I remember sometimes people, or like as an introvert, sometimes I was just done with interacting with people, to be honest. And people would come up to my parents and ask, like, does your daughter speak English? and but then other times, I mean, you could just not have me stop talking because people knew exactly the questions to ask for MKs to feel appreciated and seen. So thank you, Debbie, for bringing that up as well. Of like those resources could be very, very helpful. So thank you for bringing that up and also putting that together.
Just so you know, talking to college students who've come home in my own congregation, who I don't know all that well, I usually get about 1 or 2 sentences out of them too. It's not that different.
Mm. Before we close, would anyone else like to share or have any final questions? Yeah, Dwayne?
Maybe just how can we pray for MKs or TCKs?
I think in my experience, the biggest prayer need for MKs, whether they realize it or not, is prayer for fortification against attacks of the enemy, spiritual attacks. Because I think oftentimes missionary kids, because they're exposed to new cultures and because they're interacting with so many people, there's just a lot more opportunity for deliberate attacks. Because I was in Thailand, where spirits are very welcome. I had a lot of very openly demonic encounters that I think a lot of MKs might have similar experiences, or it might be more subtle, like struggling with depression or anxiety, or a lot of things that even non-MKs from our generation and older are struggling with. So I would say just prayer that God would fortify against attacks of the enemy, and that their walk with the Lord would be strengthened as they experience all of these different things. That's what I would say is probably top of the list for me when I think of ways to pray for missionary kids.
I want to just piggyback on that, Julia, because I think we mistakenly believe that because missionary kids are the children of missionaries, that we don't need to pray for their spiritual development, that they're taken care of, that they've got a good walk with Christ, that there's nothing to worry about there. But that is not true. In fact, I think that what our enemy would like to see most is problems with the children, because that's one of the top things that will pull the missionaries off the field, is problems with the children. So spiritually healthy children, that's an intentional work of Christ and the parents and the other people who are caring and pouring into the lives of the MKs. It doesn't happen automatically. And one of the biggest needs that I see spiritually, the current statistics that are coming out from missionary kids say that 1 in 5 will walk away from the faith altogether. And that's a lot. That's a lot of kids that are growing up seeing God at work around the world, but because of the difficult things they're experiencing and because of the attack of the enemy, they're not actually becoming Christians and Christ followers themselves. So absolutely pray for the spiritual protection, the spiritual development of our missionary kids, and for their parents, that the parents will know how best to pour Christ into their own children in the midst of their work with the cultures and communities that they're in as well.
Thank you.
I agree. I think also something to add on to that is just relationships, whether it's starting new ones, whether it's closing the chapter, just navigating all of that. And when you're in a context where either you always leave or people always leave, it's quite difficult to also not only like start new relationships, but also feel like you're loved and you're seen when all of your friends are constantly not there anymore. So just prayers for that as well.
Yeah.
And expanding on that, Nora, I would add just times of transition in general, because those are the hardest times for missionary kids, whether it's first transitioning to the field or transitioning back to the US for home assignment or transitioning to a new area of service, because not all global servants stay in one location. Some have ministry changes and move, or especially coming back to the US to go to college, or what's even harder is those who choose not to go to college, but still have to leave their host country because they age out of the visa system and they can no longer be with their parents. So they're back here for work. At least those who come for college have kind of some structure around them as they make that transition. Those who come back and just have to find a place to work and begin living in a society they've never lived in. Both of those are very difficult transitions. And the transition out of college and into life on your own, either as a single adult or as a married adult. So all of those times of transitions, those are the hardest things that the MKs will go through. And so just pray for them as they transition, that they would do that well and in very healthy ways, emotionally healthy, spiritually healthy, physically, mentally healthy.
This is my son. He just popped in, Andrew.
Hi, everyone. How's it going?
He wasn't part of the He wasn't part of the conversation, but he was at the IM office today, helping and watching the filming of all this. So
Thanks for
Great
joining.
Of course.
tell him where you are.
Well, I go to Calvin University. It's in Michigan.
Nice.
Yeah. So I'm there all year. And I come back in the summers.
What year?
Oh, I'm going into my senior year. Yeah.
Yeah. Just wanted to introduce him while he was walking in the back.
Good to meet you all. Of
MK. Yeah, good to meet you too. Thanks for joining.
course.
Okay. I think it's almost our time to end, but I don't want to cut anyone off if they have burning questions still to ask.
Well, thank you, both of you girls, for taking the time to help us understand more about MKs and the situations you're in and the needs you have. Thank you so much for co-directing our conversation. That's been great. And I hope the next school year will be terrific for both of you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining. We really appreciate the fact that you guys have taken an interest and you care about us. We see that. And the other MKs see that. We see when you take an interest and it means the world to us. And we just cannot thank you enough. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's
Thank you.
great.
Okay, as we close, maybe we can close in prayer for our MKs. Keeping in mind, thank you, Dwayne, for bringing that up, the prayer requests, and also the conference this summer where it's the all staff gathering. So almost all the MKs will be together. So that's something to look forward to and keep in mind as you pray for us, our MKs. Yeah, as we pray, we can keep in mind specifically the IMMKs, but also the MKs around the world.
Yeah.
Okay, how do we want to do this? Do we want to have one person pray, or do we want to do like a popcorn prayer situation?
Yeah. How about we do one person can close us in prayer, just for efficiency.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Hello again, Jonathan. We're just closing in
Yeah, no problem.
in prayer. Yeah. For things.
Yeah, if you'd like, I can close us in prayer.
I will actually. I am the last one coming. I might as well do
There
that,
you
right?
go. Yeah.
Okay. Lord, it's such a privilege to see these amazing folks that have been a part of your ministry as missionary kids, how they continue to have a heart for reaching out to others. And we know that they are such precious children for you. And so we do thank you for International Ministries and for allowing them to see the importance of making sure they are not overlooked or forgotten. Strengthen and guide them each and every day as they face challenges and opportunities that many of us could not even begin to imagine. But we're so thankful, Lord, for their servant's heart as well, and that they love their families. Many of them love the places in which they are now being raised, so much so that they call that home even more so than anywhere else they've ever been. So we just thank you that your world is a big world and that you created all of it and you've placed us in it to continue to share your good news. So we thank you for these two young ladies and all those other missionary kids that are out there. Allow them to know of your love and your presence, and that they hold a special and dear place in our hearts even today. We love you, Lord. In your most gracious and holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Thank
Jonathan.
you.
And thank you all
Thank you.
for joining.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Thank you
blessed
so much.
evening.
And God bless you.
Yeah, you too. God bless you all.
Thank you.